The wind was vicious at this height, whipping Valerie's hair across her face as she stood on the ledge of the 42nd floor balcony. Below, Seoul glittered like a city made of stars, beautiful and unreachable and so very far down. Her hands gripped the railing behind her, knuckles white, body trembling not from cold but from the absolute certainty that she couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't pretend. Couldn't breathe in this golden cage for one more second. She didn't hear the balcony door open, didn't hear footsteps, but suddenly Jinyoung's voice cut through the wind, raw and desperate in a way she'd never heard before. Don't. Valerie didn't turn around. Go back to your meeting. I'm sure it's more important than whatever this is. Valerie, please. His voice cracked. Please step away from the edge. Why? She laughed, and it sounded broken even to her own ears. Why do you care? We're not real, remember? This marriage. Us. It's all just business. You said so yourself. I was wrong. Something in his tone made her turn her head slightly. Jinyoung stood 5 feet away, hands raised like he was approaching a wounded animal, and his face, God. His face was wrecked with fear so raw it stole her breath. I was wrong about everything, he said, taking a careful step closer. And if you let me, I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you. But please, please step away from that ledge. You don't mean that, Valerie whispered. You can't mean that. You're gay. Everyone says so. You married me to stop the rumors, to save your company's reputation. I'm just a contract to you. Jinyoung took another step. I married you because I'm a coward, because I'd rather let people believe a lie than admit the truth. But the truth is standing on that ledge right now, about to destroy me, and I can't let that happen. What truth? Tears were streaming down Valerie's face now. That I'm desperately, terrifyingly in love with my wife. His voice broke. Completely. And I'm begging you, please don't leave me. Not like this. Not before I get the chance to fix what I've broken. Valerie's grip on the railing loosened. She turned fully to face him, and the devastation in his eyes nearly brought her to her knees. You don't love me, she said. You don't even know me. Then let me learn. Jinyoung extended his hand, trembling. Let me spend every day learning you, loving you, being worthy of you. Just please, come back inside. For a long moment, Valerie stood there, suspended between the edge and the man who'd bought her like property 6 months ago. The man who'd barely looked at her, barely touched her, barely acknowledged her existence beyond what was required for appearances. The man whose hand was shaking as he reached for her, whose face was wet with tears he didn't bother to hide, who looked like he'd shatter into a million pieces if she took one more step backward. She took his hand. The second their skin touched, Jinyoung pulled her forward, away from the edge, into his arms with such force they both stumbled. He held her like she might disappear, face buried in her neck, body shaking with sobs he'd probably never allowed himself before. I've got you, he whispered against her skin. I've got you, and I'm never letting go again. But this story doesn't start on a balcony in Seoul with a desperate confession and tears. This story starts 3 months earlier in Lagos, Nigeria, where Valerie's entire world was about to be sold to save her family from ruin. If you want to know how a Nigerian woman and a Korean billionaire went from a cold, calculated arrangement to a love so consuming it nearly destroyed them both, stay until the very end. Because what happens next will break your heart, put it back together, and make you believe that sometimes the most impossible loves are the ones worth fighting for. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, because your support keeps these stories coming. Now let's go back to where it all began. The thing about being the eldest daughter in a Nigerian family was that your dreams came second to everyone else's survival. Valerie had understood this from childhood. Watching her mother work 3 jobs, seeing her father's business collapse, knowing that her own ambitions only mattered if they served the family first. But she'd never imagined it would come to this. His name is Park Jinyoung, her father said, unable to meet her eyes. He's Korean, 35 years old, CEO of Park Industries, net worth around $15 billion. Valerie stood frozen in the doorway of their cramped Lagos apartment, her mind refusing to process what her ears were hearing. Papa, what are you saying? I'm saying he's agreed to marry you. Her father finally looked up, and the shame in his eyes was worse than any anger. In exchange, his company will acquire our debt, all 7 million naira of it. You'll live in Seoul. You'll want for nothing. The room tilted sideways. You're selling me. Don't be dramatic, her mother snapped. This is an opportunity. Do you know how many girls would kill for a chance like this? Then let them have it. Valerie's voice rose despite her attempt at control. I don't want to marry a stranger. I don't want to leave Nigeria. I have a life here, Mama. I have plans. I'm starting my law degree next semester. With what money? Her father interrupted, standing now. What plans, Valerie? Your law degree costs money we don't have. Your younger siblings need school fees. Your mother needs treatment for her diabetes. We're drowning, and this man has thrown us a lifeline. Why? Valerie demanded. Why would a billionaire need to buy a wife from Nigeria? What's wrong with him? Silence. The kind that meant her parents were hiding something. Mama? Valerie's voice went cold. Why does he need a wife? Her mother's lips pressed into a thin line. There are rumors about him in Korea, about his preferences. He needs a wife to stop the speculation. You need security. It's mutually beneficial. Understanding crashed over her like ice water. He's gay. You're marrying me off to a gay man who needs me as a beard. We don't know that for certain, her father said quickly. And even if it's true, does it matter? You'll live in luxury, Valerie. He's promised separate bedrooms, your own accounts. Except choose my own life. Except have a real marriage. Marriage isn't about love, her mother said flatly. It's about stability, security, survival. You're 24 years old. It's time you learned that. The contract is already signed, her father said quietly. The money has been transferred. Your visa is being processed. You leave for Seoul in 2 weeks. The floor dropped out from under her. You signed before even asking me? I did what I had to do to save this family. Her father still, it wouldn't meet her eyes. And now you'll do your part. Valerie ran from the apartment before they could see her break. Seoul in January was a shock to every sense Valerie possessed. The cold was brutal, biting through her jacket like knives. The airport was all glass and steel and Korean characters she couldn't read. And everywhere, people stared at her dark skin like she was an alien who'd crash-landed in their world. Miss Valerie? A man in an expensive suit approached with a slight bow. I am Secretary Han. Mr. Park sends his regrets that he could not meet you personally. He's been detained by urgent business matters. Of course he had. Even collecting his purchased bride took second place to business. The drive to Gangnam was surreal. Seoul looked like something from a science fiction film. Neon lights, skyscrapers that seemed to pierce the clouds, everything moving with precision and purpose. It was beautiful and sterile and utterly overwhelming. The building they stopped at looked like it cost more than Valerie's entire neighborhood back home. Mr. Park's residence, Secretary Han announced. Penthouse level. Your belongings will be brought up shortly. The penthouse was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River. Furniture that belonged in a museum. Everything white and marble and impossibly pristine. Secretary Han said, The restaurant is called Mingles. A car will collect you at 7:30. Please dress formally. Then he left, and Valerie was alone in her golden cage. She lasted 30 minutes before the walls started closing in. She'd pulled out her phone to call her best friend Chioma when she noticed the time. 7:15. She had 15 minutes to get ready for dinner with the stranger she'd been sold to. Valerie chose a simple black dress from the closet someone had stocked with clothes in her size. She did her makeup. With shaking hands, twisted her braids into an elegant updo, and stared at her reflection wondering who this woman was who was about to have dinner with her future husband. She'd been sitting alone at the restaurant table for 52 minutes when he finally arrived. The other diners, wealthy Koreans dripping in designer labels, had been throwing her pitying looks for the past 20 minutes. The waiters hovered with increasing awkwardness. Humiliation burned through Valerie's veins like acid. She was gathering her purse to leave when the restaurant went silent. Valerie looked up and saw him. Park Jinyoung moved through the space like he owned it, which he probably did. Tall, devastatingly handsome in a navy suit that probably cost more than her father's debt. His features were sharp, high cheekbones, strong jaw. Lips set in a line that suggested he'd forgotten how to smile. And his eyes, dark and intense, swept the room before landing on her. Valerie's breath caught, despite herself. The photos hadn't prepared her for this. For him, he reached her table without hurrying. And when he spoke, his English was perfect, barely accented. Miss Valerie, you're late. She blinked. I'm what? I specified 7:30 arrival. It's now 7:52. Punctuality is a basic courtesy. Fury replaced shock. Valerie stood abruptly, her chair scraping back. You're almost an hour late to meet the woman you paid to marry, and you're lecturing me about punctuality? Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. I was held up by... I don't care. Valerie grabbed her purse. Tell Secretary Han to book my return flight. Tell my father the deal is off. I'd rather live in poverty than marry someone who can't even show basic respect. She made it 3 steps before his hand caught her wrist. The touch sent electricity through her skin. Wait. Let me go. Please. The word sounded like it cost him everything. You're right. I was inexcusably rude. Please, sit. Let me start again. Valerie should have kept walking, should have followed her instincts, but something in his voice, a crack in that perfect control, made her pause. 5 minutes, she said coldly. Explain why I shouldn't leave. He released her immediately, hands raised slightly. Up close she could see exhaustion shadowing his eyes, tension in his jaw. He looked like a man barely holding himself together. I was late because I was in an emergency board meeting, he said finally. They've been questioning my decision to marry someone they consider unsuitable. Unsuitable, Valerie repeated flatly. Because I'm Nigerian. Because I'm black. Because you're not what they expected. Because this marriage threatens their carefully constructed narrative about who I should be. He paused. I criticized your timing because I'm terrible at personal interactions. And I defaulted to business mode. It was inappropriate. I apologize. You're not good at apologies either. No, I'm not good at most human interactions, which is why I need this arrangement. His expression remained neutral, but his hands clenched briefly on the table. The rumors about me are destroying business relationships. International partners are uncomfortable. The board questions my judgment. I need a wife to make them stop. What's the truth? Valerie asked quietly. About the rumors? Does it matter? He leaned back, studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. You're here because your family needed money. I'm here because I need respectability. This is transactional. Pretending otherwise is inefficient. The word should have hurt. Instead, Valerie felt something else. Recognition. Here was someone as trapped as she was, just in a different kind of cage. Fine, she said, sitting back down. Then let me be clear about my terms. I'll play the perfect wife in public. I'll smile for cameras, learn Korean, wear the right clothes, but in private, you treat me with respect. You show up when you say you will. You treat me like a human being, not a problem you paid to solve. Can you do that? Something shifted in his expression. Yes, I can do that. Then we have a deal, Mr. Park Jinyoung, he corrected. If we're going to be married, use my name. The name felt foreign in her mouth. Jinyoung. Valerie. The way he said it carefully, like he was learning its shape, made something flutter in her chest that she immediately crushed. After they ordered, Jinyoung said, I know you have a degree in international relations from the University of Lagos. I know you speak English, Yoruba, and passable French. I know you were planning to study law before your family situation changed. I know you volunteer at a women's shelter in Ikeja. Valerie didn't know whether to be impressed or disturbed. You researched me. I research everything. It's how I've built my company. Well, you missed one thing. Valerie met his eyes. My dreams aren't dead, just delayed. I'll play your wife, Jinyoung. But I won't lose myself in the process. And when this arrangement ends, when you don't need me anymore, I'm getting my life back. When this ends, he repeated softly, something unreadable in his expression. You're already planning the divorce, aren't you? He was quiet for a long moment. No, I don't do anything halfway. If I'm getting married, I'm staying married. Divorce would be worse for my reputation than the rumors. Valerie laughed bitterly. So I'm trapped forever in a loveless marriage to a man who isn't even attracted to women. What a fairy tale. Love is for children, Jinyoung said flatly. What we have is better. Clear expectations. No messy emotions to complicate things. Valerie should have been relieved. Instead, she felt hollow. What a lonely way to live. The dinner continued with careful, formal conversation. By the end, they'd established ground rules. Separate bedrooms. Minimal, physical contact beyond what was required for appearances. Weekly dinners to maintain the illusion. It was practical, efficient, everything Jinyoung preferred. It was also the loneliest arrangement Valerie had ever agreed to. When he drove her back to the penthouse in a car that probably cost more than most houses, Jinyoung walked her to her bedroom door with stiff formality. "The wedding is in 3 weeks," he said. "I've hired a planner. You'll have fittings, Korean language lessons, etiquette training, media coaching. It will be intensive. I can handle intensive." "I believe you can." He paused, something flickering in his expression. "Thank you for not running, for giving this a chance despite how terrible I am at being human." Before Valerie could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the doorway wondering what she'd gotten herself into. If you're loving this story so far, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This is about to get so much more intense, and you won't want to miss what happens next. The wedding was a spectacle designed for maximum publicity. 400 guests, most of whom Valerie had never met. A ceremony that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Cameras from every major Korean news outlet, carefully curated by Jinyoung's PR team. Valerie wore a custom gown that weighed more than she did, and smiled until her face hurt. And through it all, Jinyoung stood beside her like a statue, his hand on her waist only when cameras were near, his expression perfect and empty. At the reception, his business associates congratulated him with barely concealed curiosity. The Korean socialites who'd been vying for his attention looked at Valerie with thinly veiled contempt, and Valerie smiled and nodded and played her part while dying inside. "You're doing well?" Jinyoung murmured during their first dance, his hand on her back impersonal and careful. "The press is pleased." "I'm so glad I'm performing adequately," Valerie said sweetly, loud enough only for him to hear. His jaw tightened. "That's not what I meant, isn't it?" She met his eyes. "Isn't that all this is? A performance?" He didn't answer, just held her through the dance with careful distance, and when it ended, he disappeared into conversations with business partners, while Valerie smiled at strangers and wondered how she'd survive a lifetime of this. That night, back at the penthouse, Jinyoung walked her to her bedroom door. "You did well today," he said formally. "Get some rest, Jinyoung." Valerie stopped him before he could leave. "Can I ask you something?" He turned, guarded. "What?" "The rumors about you. Are they true?" Silence stretched between them like a living thing. "Would it matter if they were?" he finally asked. I want to know what I'm dealing with. I want to know if this," she gestured between them, "if this will always be nothing." Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe. "What do you want me to say, Valerie? That I'm going to suddenly fall in love with you? That this arrangement will become a fairy tale? Because I can't promise that. I don't know how to be what you want." "I'm not asking you to love me," Valerie said quietly. "I'm just asking if you'll ever see me. Really see me. Not as a solution to your problem, but as a person." Jinyoung stared at her for a long moment, something raw and unguarded in his eyes. "I see you," he said finally, his voice rough. "More than you know. But seeing you and knowing what to do about it are two different things." Then he left, and Valerie stood alone in the hallway, with her heart pounding, and no idea what any of it meant. The first 2 months of marriage were ice. They maintained separate schedules, ate separate meals, existed in the same space like ghosts who never touched. Jinyoung worked constantly 18-hour days that meant Valerie barely saw him. And when she did, he was polite, distant, every inch the business partner she'd agreed to become. Valerie tried to build a life. She enrolled in Korean language classes at a university nearby, started online courses toward her law degree, explored Seoul with the cautious wonder of someone who knew she didn't belong. And she called home every week, lying to her mother about how happy she was while her father asked pointed questions about Jinyoung's business investments. The loneliness was crushing. "You look miserable," Chioma said during one of their video calls. "Valerie, if this is killing you, I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're trapped in a marriage with a man who treats you like furniture." "It's what I agreed to." Valerie forced a smile. "And it's not so bad. The penthouse is beautiful. Seoul is interesting. I'm learning the language." But it wasn't fine. It was slowly suffocating her. The cracks started to show in the 3rd month. Valerie was making breakfast something small, just for herself, since Jinyoung always left before dawn when he appeared in the kitchen. He looked exhausted, his normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled. "You're up early," Valerie said carefully. "Couldn't sleep." He moved to the coffee maker with mechanical efficiency. I didn't mean to disturb you. You're not disturbing me. This is your home. Is it? The words came out sharper than Valerie intended. Jinyoung, I've been here 3 months, and I still don't know where half the things are kept. I have a bedroom I sleep in and a closet full of clothes someone else picked out. This doesn't feel like my home. It feels like a very expensive hotel, where I'm an unwelcome guest. He turned then, something flickering in his expression. What do you want me to do? I don't know. Valerie set down her tea with more force than necessary. Maybe act like I exist. Maybe have a conversation that isn't about schedules or appearances. Maybe acknowledge that this is weird and hard, and neither of us knows what we're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, Jinyoung said coldly. I'm maintaining our arrangement as agreed. Right. The arrangement. Valerie laughed bitterly. God forbid we be actual human beings to each other. She left the kitchen before he could respond, her heart pounding with frustration, and something else she didn't want to name. But she felt his eyes on her back as she walked away, felt the weight of something unspoken between them. Things shifted after that morning. Small changes, barely noticeable at first. Jinyoung started coming home for dinner occasionally. They'd eat in careful silence at first. But slowly, conversation started to happen. Small things. How was your day? Did you finish your Korean class? The weather's supposed to be nice this weekend. He asked about her studies, her progress with the language, whether she'd found a good Nigerian restaurant in Itaewon. There's one, Valerie told him. Good. The owner is from Ghana. She asks about you sometimes. Wants to know if the famous Park Jinyoung actually exists, or if I made him up. What do you tell her? That I'm still trying to figure that out myself. Something almost like a smile crossed his face. The small changes accumulated. He started leaving notes when he had to leave early, just practical things. When he'd be back, whether she needed anything. But it was something. Valerie started leaving Korean news on in the morning, knowing he'd watch it over coffee. Started keeping his preferred tea stocked. Small gestures that felt absurd but somehow necessary. They were learning each other. Slowly, carefully, like two people trying to read a language neither of them spoke. And then, 4 months into the marriage, everything changed. Valerie woke in the middle of the night to shouting in the living room. Male voices speaking rapid Korean, sounds of struggle, something crashing. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands, about to call security, when her bedroom door burst open. 2 men entered, one young and desperate looking, one older with cold eyes, and they were speaking Korean too fast for her to understand. But their intentions were clear when the younger one grabbed her arm and dragged her from the bed. Valerie screamed, fought, but they were stronger, and within seconds, she was being hauled into the living room where more men waited, and the windows overlooking Seoul suddenly felt like a 42-story drop to certain death. They were speaking Korean, arguing about something, and then one of them, the older one, pulled out his phone and made a call. Valerie's Korean wasn't good enough to understand everything, but she caught enough. Jinyoung's name, money, ransom, terror flooded her system. This was a kidnapping. They'd broken into Jinyoung's penthouse, taken her hostage, and were now demanding money for her return. The call ended. They waited. And Valerie's mind raced through every possible escape route, every self-defense move she'd learned, knowing none of it would work against 4 grown men. 20 minutes later, the penthouse door opened. Jinyoung stood in the doorway, and Valerie had never seen him like this. His hair was disheveled, his shirt partially unbuttoned like he'd dressed in a hurry, and his face, God, his face was a mask of barely controlled fury. Let her go, he said in Korean, his voice deadly calm. The older man laughed, saying something that made the others snicker. He had a knife now, pressed against Valerie's throat, and she could feel the cold steel against her skin. Jinyoung's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went absolutely feral. I said. He repeated in English, his gaze locked on Valerie. Let my wife go. The man with the knife said something in Korean, a demand, probably, a negotiation. Jinyoung's response was in Korean, but his tone made Valerie's blood run cold. He spoke slowly, deliberately, each word punctuated with quiet menace. Whatever he said made the man's grip loosen slightly, made the others shift nervously, and then Jinyoung did something that shocked everyone. He switched to English, still staring at Valerie. Close your eyes, he said softly. Trust me. Close your eyes. Valerie didn't understand, didn't know what he was planning. But something in his voice, something certain and commanding, made her obey. She closed her eyes. What happened next took maybe 10 seconds. But it felt like an eternity. She heard movement, a shout, the sound of something hitting the floor, more shouting, and then hands on her arms, gentle hands, familiar hands pulling her away from the knife, away from danger, into warmth and safety. I've got you, Jinyoung's voice murmured against her hair. You're safe. I've got you. Valerie opened her eyes to chaos. The 4 men were on the floor, subdued by security guards who'd apparently arrived with Jinyoung. Police were streaming through the door, and Jinyoung was holding her like she might disappear, his face buried in her neck, his body shaking. How? Valerie whispered. How did you know? You weren't answering your phone. His voice was rough. I called to tell you I'd be late, and you didn't answer. So I called security to check on you, and they saw the breach. I was across the city, and I drove like a madman to get here. And when I walked in and saw that knife against your throat, he broke off, pulling back just enough to look at her, to scan her face, her neck, checking for injuries with hands that trembled. Did they hurt you? He demanded. Tell me they didn't hurt you. I'm fine, Valerie managed. Jinyoung, I'm fine, just scared. You're shaking. He pulled her closer again, and this time, she realized he was shaking too. God, Valerie, when I saw you, when I thought... He didn't finish, just held her while police took statements and security escorted the men out and the penthouse filled with people and noise and controlled chaos. But through it all, Jinyoung didn't let her go. It was 3 a.m. by the time everyone left. The police had taken detailed statements. The security team had swept the entire building. Secretary Han had arrived to handle the media fallout. And through it all, Jinyoung had stayed beside Valerie, his hand on her shoulder or her back or holding hers, like he needed the physical contact to believe she was real and safe. Now, finally alone in the wrecked living room, Valerie started shaking again. Everything that hadn't hit her during the crisis crashed over her now. The knife, the fear, the certainty that she might die. Valerie. Jinyoung was there immediately, pulling her into his chest. You're safe now. You're safe. I thought. Her voice broke. I thought they were going to kill me. They didn't. You're here. You're safe. His arms tightened around her. I won't let anyone hurt you. Ever. Do you understand me? Valerie pulled back enough to look at him. Really look at him. At the fear still shadowing his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way he was holding her like she was precious, irreplaceable. The rumors, she said quietly. About you. They're not true, are they? Jinyoung's expression shuddered. Valerie, are they? He was quiet for a long moment, something warring in his expression. Then roughly, no, they're not true. They never were. Then why? Because it was easier. He released her, stepping back, and she immediately missed his warmth. In my industry, in my position, people make assumptions. And I let them because the truth. He stopped, jaw clenching. What's the truth? Valerie asked softly. The truth is that I'm not good at relationships, at emotional connections, at being what people need. He looked away. The truth is that I watched my parents destroy each other with what they called love, and I swore I'd never let that happen to me. So I built walls. And when people started assuming things about me, I let them, because it meant they stopped expecting me to feel things I didn't know how to feel. And us? Valerie's heart was pounding. What are we? I don't know. He met her eyes, and the vulnerability there nearly destroyed her. I told myself this was just business, just an arrangement, but then you moved in, and you were everywhere. In my kitchen making breakfast, learning Korean, asking about my day. And I didn't know what to do with that, with you. So you avoided me. So I avoided you, he agreed. Because I didn't know how to be around you without... He stopped. Without what? Without wanting more than what we agreed to. The confession hung between them like a living thing. Tonight, when I got that call, when I realized you were in danger, I've never been so terrified in my life. The thought of losing you, of something happening to you before I could tell you. Tell me what? Valerie whispered. Jinyoung crossed the space between them in 2 strides, cupping her face with a gentleness that made her breath catch. That I want more, he said roughly. That somewhere between the wedding and now, between the careful distance and the small conversations, I started falling for my wife. And I don't know how to do this, how to be what you deserve, but I want to try, if you'll let me. Valerie stared at him, her heart racing. You're serious? I'm terrified, he corrected. But yes, I'm serious. I want to try this, really try. Not as an arrangement, but as whatever this could become. You'll probably mess it up, Valerie said, her voice shaking. Probably. I'll work too much and forget to communicate and default to business mode when I'm uncomfortable. And I'll call you on it. And we'll fight. And we'll figure it out, Jinyoung said softly. Together. For a long moment they just stood there, staring at each other in the round wreckage of their living room, on the edge of something new and terrifying and impossibly fragile. Then Valerie rose on her toes and kissed him. It was nothing like she'd imagined. It was desperate and clumsy and perfect. It tasted like coffee and tears and the beginning of something neither of them had planned for. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jinyoung rested his forehead against hers. This changes everything, he murmured. I know. I'm probably going to be terrible at this. Probably, Valerie agreed, her lips curving into a small smile. And maybe that's enough. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because this story, this impossible, unexpected, beautiful story, was just beginning. Drop a comment right now telling me what you're feeling. Are you crying? Are you screaming? Because this is just the beginning, and you need to stay till the end. The transformation wasn't instant. Jinyoung didn't suddenly become perfect. He still worked too much, still struggled with emotional expression, still defaulted to business mode when uncomfortable. But he tried. He started coming home for dinner every night, no exceptions unless absolutely critical. Started asking about Valerie's day and actually listening to the answers. Started leaving little notes, thought of you during my meeting, coming home early tonight, miss you, that made her smile every time. Valerie started learning his patterns. The way he got quiet when stressed. The way he'd stand at the window staring out at Seoul when he was thinking through a problem. The way he'd reach for her hand without seeming to realize he was doing it. They had their first real fight, 3 weeks after the kidnapping. Something stupid, Jinyoung canceling dinner plans to take an emergency call from New York. Valerie accused him of reverting to old patterns. He accused her of being unreasonable. They both said things they didn't mean. And then, Jinyoung did something that shocked her. He came to find her in the bedroom where she'd retreated, and he said, I'm sorry. Valerie looked up from where she was sitting on the bed, arms wrapped around her knees. What? I'm sorry. He sat beside her, careful not to touch. I prioritized work over you again, and that's not fair when I promised to try. You were right to be angry. I overreacted, Valerie admitted. I know your work is important. You're more important. He reached for her hand. I'm still learning that. Still learning how to balance everything. But I mean it, Valerie. You're more important than any deal or meeting or merger. I need you to be patient with me while I figure out how to show it. I can be patient, Valerie said softly. As long as you keep trying. I'll keep trying. He pulled her into his arms. I promise. The changes accumulated like snowfall, small, steady, transforming everything. Jinyoung started taking Sundays off. Something Secretary Han said he'd never done in 10 years. They explored Seoul together, finding hidden cafes and quiet parks and street food vendors. He held her hand in public now, not for appearances, but because he wanted to. At night, they fell asleep in the same bed, Valerie's room, because it felt cozier than his sterile space, wrapped around each other like they'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. I never thought I could have this, Jinyoung murmured one night, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. This kind of connection. I convinced myself I didn't want it. What changed? Valerie asked. You. He kissed her forehead. You refused to let me hide. You pushed back when I tried to keep you at a distance. You made me want to try. I'm glad I pushed. So am I. Jinyoung turned her in his arms to face him properly. The rumors are going to be a problem, you know. When people find out this is real, that we're actually together. Let them talk, Valerie said. I don't care anymore what they think. You might. Korean society can be brutal. Then we'll face it together. She kissed him softly. I'm not going anywhere, Jinyoung. You're stuck with me now. His arms tightened around her. Good, because I'm not letting you go. 6 months into their marriage, Jinyoung took Valerie back to Lagos to meet her family properly, not as the business arrangement he'd purchased, but as the wife he'd fallen in love with. Her father opened the door and stared at them. At how Jinyoung's arm was wrapped protectively around Valerie's waist. At how she was leaning into him. At how they looked at each other. "Papa," Valerie said softly, "I want you to meet my husband properly this time." Dinner was awkward at first. Her parents clearly didn't know what to make of this new dynamic. Her younger siblings kept whispering and giggling. But as the evening wore on, as they watched Jinyoung help Valerie in the kitchen, laugh at her jokes, look at her, like she hung the moon, understanding dawned. "You love her," her father said quietly when Valerie stepped out to take a phone call. "Actually love her." "Yes," Jinyoung said simply. "More than I thought I could love anyone. I'm sorry." Her father's voice cracked. "I'm sorry I sold her to you like she was property. I thought I was saving the family, but I nearly destroyed my daughter's happiness." "You didn't destroy anything," Jinyoung said. "You gave me the greatest gift of my life. I just had to learn how to appreciate it, how to deserve it." That night, lying in Valerie's childhood bedroom much smaller than what they were used to, she asked, "Do you regret it? That we started the way we did?" "Never," Jinyoung pulled her closer. "Because every day I get to choose you. Not because of a contract or obligation, but because I want to. Because I love you, and that means everything." Valerie kissed him in the darkness of her childhood room, in the place where she'd once cried herself to sleep over this arrangement, and thought, this is how love stories are supposed to work. Not perfect from the start, but willing to become perfect together. But not everyone was happy about their transformation. 2 months later, back in Seoul, the cracks in their happiness started to show. "There's a problem," Secretary Han said during a private meeting with Jinyoung. Valerie wasn't supposed to be listening, but she'd come home early and heard voices in the study. "What kind of problem?" Jinyoung's voice was tense. "The board. They're not happy about the marriage becoming real. They preferred the arrangement when it was just for show." "Why do they care?" "Because they're worried you're compromised, that you're making decisions based on emotion rather than logic, that your wife has too much influence over you." Valerie's stomach dropped. "That's ridiculous," Jinyoung said coldly. "Is it? You've turned down 3 major deals in the past month, because they would have required extended time away from Seoul. You've restructured your entire schedule around her. You're not the same CEO you were before, Jinyoung. And the board is noticing." Silence. "What are they proposing?" Jinyoung finally asked. "They want you to create distance. Go back to the original arrangement. Maintain appearances but nothing more. They think it's affecting your judgment. And if I refuse, they'll call for a vote of no confidence. You could lose your position as CEO." Valerie didn't wait to hear more. She slipped away quietly, her heart pounding, and went straight to the balcony, the same balcony where this had all nearly ended months ago. She stood there for a long time, watching Seoul's lights blur through her tears, and thought about everything. The contract, the arrangement, the life Jinyoung had built before she'd crashed into it. And she realized something that made her chest ache. Between Jinyoung and everything he'd worked for, she was the compromise that was compromising him. She was still standing there, staring at the 42-story drop, when she heard the balcony door open behind her. "Don't." And that's where this story began. With Valerie on the edge, Jinyoung behind her, and a choice that would change everything. "Why do you care?" Valerie had whispered. "We're not real. This marriage, us, it's all just business." "I was wrong," Jinyoung had said. "I was wrong about everything." And when he'd confessed that he loved her, when he'd begged her to come back inside, Valerie had made a choice. She'd chosen him, chosen them, chosen this messy, imperfect, beautiful thing they'd built. But now, standing in their bedroom after that conversation she'd overheard, Valerie had to make another choice. "I heard," she said when Jinyoung came to find her. "Your conversation with Secretary Han, about the board." His expression shuddered. "Valerie, they're right," she said quietly. "I am compromising you. Your work, your position, everything you built before I came along. No." Jinyoung crossed the room in 3 strides, taking her face in his hands. "Don't do this. Don't start thinking that way. But it's true. You've changed your entire life for me, and now it's costing you." "Good," he said fiercely. "Let it cost me. I don't care. You should care. This is your life's work, Jinyoung. Your company. Your legacy. I can't be the reason you lose it. You're not the reason. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. They are. They're stuck in old ways of thinking, old ideas about how a CEO should be. But I'm not going back to who I was before you. I won't. What if you have to choose? Valerie whispered. Between me and the company? Then I choose you. No hesitation. Every single time, I choose you. Jinyoung, do you want to know what I told Secretary Han after you left? He pulled her closer. I told him to schedule an emergency board meeting. I told him I'm done hiding, done compromising, done pretending that my personal life is up for their approval. And I told him that if they want my resignation, they can have it. But they're not getting you. They're not getting us. Valerie stared at him. You can't resign. That company is everything to you. No. His forehead dropped to hers. You're everything to me. The company is just a company. But you're my wife, my partner, my future. And I'll burn it all down before I let anyone take you away from me. You'd really do that, she whispered. Give up everything? I already gave up everything, Jinyoung said softly. The day I decided to marry you, I gave up the person I was before, the cold, closed-off person who thought emotions were weaknesses and love was inefficient. And you know what? I don't miss him. I don't want to be him ever again. Valerie kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into it: love, fear, gratitude, hope. So what do we do? She asked against his lips. We fight, he said simply. Together, we show them that I'm a better CEO because of you, not in spite of you. We prove that love doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger. And if they can't see that, then they don't deserve to be part of this company anyway. The board meeting was scheduled for the following week, and Jinyoung did something unprecedented. He invited Valerie to attend. Are you sure? She asked, nervous in the elegant business suit she'd chosen for the occasion. I'm sure. He took her hand. I want them to see us together, to see what we've built. Let them try to call that a weakness. The boardroom was all dark wood and leather chairs and men in expensive suits who looked at Valerie like she was an intruder. She held her head high and took the seat beside Jinyoung at the head of the table. Gentlemen, Jinyoung began, his voice cold and commanding. I understand you've called this meeting to discuss my marriage and its impact on my performance as CEO. We have concerns, one of the older board members said. Your recent decisions have been questionable. Questionable how? You've turned down lucrative opportunities, restructured your schedule in ways that limit your availability, allowed personal matters to influence business decisions. I see. Jinyoung leaned back. And the company's performance? How has that been affected? Silence. I'll tell you, Jinyoung continued. Our stock price is up 18% since my marriage. We've secured 4 major international contracts that we'd been pursuing for years. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high. Revenue has increased by 23%. So please, tell me again how my marriage is compromising the company. More silence. The truth is, Jinyoung said, standing now, I'm a better CEO now than I was before, because I've learned something that you clearly haven't. That, being human, having connections, caring about something beyond profit margins that doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger. It gives you perspective. It makes you a better leader. He looked at Valerie, and the love in his eyes made her chest tight. My wife didn't compromise me, he said, still looking at her. She completed me. She made me remember why I built this company in the first place, not just to accumulate wealth, but to create something meaningful. And if you can't see that, if you can't understand that, then perhaps it's time for new leadership. But it won't be me stepping down. It'll be you. The room erupted. Voices raised in protest, in support, in shock. But Valerie only heard Jinyoung's voice, steady and certain, as he defended their love in a room full of people who didn't understand it. And she realized something. This was what real love looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but worth fighting for. Worth standing up for. Worth everything. If you're feeling all the emotions right now, hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed because this story isn't over yet. The board meeting ended with a vote. 8 members sided with Jinyoung, 4 didn't. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Jinyoung kept his position. And more importantly, he kept his wife. That night, they celebrated at the penthouse with takeout and cheap wine because neither of them felt like going out. "You were incredible today," Valerie said, curled up against him on the couch. "Because I knew what I was fighting for. Us. Us," he agreed. "Always us." They were quiet for a moment, and then Valerie said, "Do you remember what you said to me? On the balcony that night? I said a lot of things. You said you were desperately, terrifyingly in love with me." Jinyoung's arms tightened around her. "I remember. I never said it back," Valerie said softly. "Not properly. I kissed you, and then everything happened so fast. And I never actually said it. You don't have to. I want to." She turned to face him. "I'm desperately, terrifyingly, completely in love with you, Park Jinyoung. You're arrogant and workaholic and terrible at emotions. But you're also kind and loyal and willing to fight for what matters. And you matter. We matter. This messy, imperfect, beautiful thing we've built, it matters more than anything." Jinyoung kissed her softly, reverently. "Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you." She laughed against his lips. "I love you, I love you, I love you." "Good," he murmured. "Because you're stuck with me now. For better or worse. For business arrangements that become something more. For always." "For always," Valerie agreed. 1 year into their marriage, Park Industries held its annual gala. The entire Seoul elite would be there. The press would be circling. And this time Valerie wasn't nervous. She wore a stunning gown, deep emerald, that made her skin glow, and stood beside her husband as he greeted guests with the confidence of a woman who knew exactly where she belonged. "You're staring?" Valerie murmured as they took their seats for dinner. "Can't help it," Jinyoung said, not looking away. "You're the most beautiful woman here." "You're biased." "Absolutely." He brought her hand to his lips. "And I don't care who knows it." The whispers had long since changed from speculation about his sexuality to fascination with their love story. The cold CEO who'd melted for his arranged bride. The Nigerian woman who'd captured Korea's most eligible bachelor's heart. During his speech, Jinyoung did something unexpected. "Before I discuss this year's numbers," he said, his eyes finding Valerie in the crowd, "I want to say something personal." The room went quiet. "A year ago, I made what I thought was a purely business decision," he continued. "I entered into a marriage of convenience with a woman I barely knew. And I told myself it was just an arrangement. Just a solution to a problem." He extended his hand toward Valerie, and she rose, moving to stand beside him with her heart in her throat. "But the truth is," Jinyoung said, switching to English so she'd understand every word, "Valerie came into my life as a contract. She became my wife because of obligations and mutual benefit. But she became my everything because she refused to let me hide. She saw past every wall I'd built and loved me anyway. She taught me that loving someone doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger than you ever imagined possible." Tears were streaming down Valerie's face now. "So I want everyone here to know," Jinyoung continued, his voice rough with emotion, "that this woman beside me isn't just my wife in name. She's my partner, my best friend, the person I choose every single day, and I am the luckiest man alive because she chooses me back." The applause was deafening, but Valerie, he didn't hear it. She only heard Jinyoung whisper, "I love you," as he pulled her into his arms. "I love you too," she whispered back. "Even when you're terrible at being human." He laughed, that rare, genuine laugh that she'd worked so hard to coax from him, especially then. They kissed in front of Seoul's elite, in front of cameras and gossip columnists and everyone who'd ever doubted them. And Valerie thought, this is what happens when two people refuse to accept that their story is supposed to be cold. Sometimes the impossible becomes inevitable. Sometimes the arrangement becomes the love story. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to choose each other every single day. 2 years into their marriage, Valerie stood in the bathroom of their penthouse, staring at a pregnancy test with shaking hands. Positive. She didn't know how long she stood there before Jinyoung found her. "Valerie?" He appeared in the doorway, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" She couldn't speak. "Just held up the test." Jinyoung stared at it, then at her, then back at the test. "We're having a baby," she whispered. For a long moment, he didn't move, and Valerie's heart started to sink because, Maybe this was too much, too fast. Maybe he wasn't ready. Then Jinyoung crossed the bathroom in 2 strides, dropped to his knees, and pressed his face against her stomach. "We're having a baby," he said, his voice breaking. "Valerie, we're having a baby. Are you happy?" she asked, running her fingers through his hair. He looked up at her, and his face was wet with tears. Happy doesn't even begin to cover it. Terrified. Yes. Overwhelmed. Absolutely. But happy? "Valerie, I'm so happy I don't have words for it." She pulled him up, kissed him softly. "We're going to be parents. We're going to be terrible at it," he said, making her laugh. "Probably, but we'll figure it out. Together," he agreed, his hand covering hers on her still flat stomach. "Always. Together." If this story wrecked you in the best way possible, show some love by hitting that like button and dropping a comment telling me your favorite moment. Was it the balcony scene? The board meeting? The pregnancy reveal? I read every single comment, and your support means everything. ***. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on because I have more stories coming that will make you believe in impossible love. Stories about arranged marriages that become real, about cold hearts that learn to feel, about 2 people who choose each other against all odds, because love doesn't always start perfectly. Sometimes it starts with a contract and separate bedrooms and 2 people who don't know how to be what the other needs. But that doesn't mean it can't become something beautiful, something worth fighting for, something that changes everything. Thanks for being here. Thanks for believing in Jinyoung and Valerie's story. And remember, the best love stories aren't the ones that start perfect, they're the ones where 2 people are willing to become perfect together. I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications.